The next morning, the palace was filled with quiet excitement. Servants moved faster than usual, carrying trays of food, fresh flowers, and ceremonial cloths. Guards checked their weapons and polished their silver armor until it shone like mirrors. The reason was simple. The humans would meet the princess in a more personal setting today. Princess Avara rose early. She stood by her mirror as Marin helped her prepare. Avara wore a gown of soft teal silk that caught the light with every step. Around her neck was a small crystal pendant, a gift from her late mother. She wore it on important days. "You seem thoughtful this morning, Princess," Marin said as she adjusted the gown. Avara smiled faintly. "I am always thoughtful, Marin. That is my job." Marin gave her a knowing look. "Is it the humans? People say they are very direct. They speak their thoughts without hiding them." Avara's smile faded into curiosity. "Direct? That is not common here. It is not common anywhere, Princess. But perhaps that is why they travel so far, to see and speak without fear." The words stayed with Avara as she walked to the palace gardens. The meeting was set there, under the shade of the tall crystal leaf trees. A long table had been placed near the central fountain, and bowls of glowing fruit had been arranged as a sign of welcome. The humans arrived soon after. Captain Mira walked in front, tall and confident, her eyes scanning the surroundings with calm focus. Beside her walked the man Avara had noticed yesterday, the engineer. He wore simple clothes in shades of gray, with a small device clipped to his belt. His hair was slightly messy, as if he had been working on something before arriving. He looked around the garden with open wonder, his gaze pausing on the crystal leaves, the silver koi swimming in the fountain, and finally on Avara herself. When the introductions began, Captain Mira spoke first. "Princess Avara, it is an honor to stand in your home. This world is even more beautiful than the stories we have heard. You are welcome here." "Captain Mira," Avara said with a formal nod. Her voice carried the calm tone expected of royalty. "May your visit bring understanding between our peoples." One by one, the human team introduced themselves: scientists, translators, cultural advisors. When it came to the engineer, he stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "I'm Tomas," he said simply. His voice was warm, not forced. "I fix things. Sometimes I even understand them." A few ministers standing nearby looked puzzled at his casual words. Avara, however, found herself suppressing a small smile. The gathering moved to polite conversation. The ministers spoke about trade, resources, and travel routes. Captain Mira answered with steady diplomacy. But Avara noticed Tomas was less interested in politics, and more in the details of the world around him. When the ministers discussed the flow of goods, Tomas quietly asked a servant about the design of the fountain. When they talked about star maps, he glanced up at the sky, as if imagining the journey himself. After some time, the formalities ended, and the guests were free to walk the gardens. Most people formed small groups, but Tomas seemed to wander alone, his hands behind his back, his eyes curious about every flower and stone. Avara found herself walking toward the fountain, where he had stopped. "This fountain," Tomas said. As she approached, "Is it powered by natural flow or a hidden mechanism?" Avara tilted her head. "Both. There is a spring beneath, but the pressure is maintained by a crystal pump hidden in the base." Tomas grinned. "A hidden pump? Clever. You make it look natural, but you still help it along." "That is the way of Celara," she said. "We shape the world gently, without making our changes too visible." Tomas looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "That's very different from humans. We often build big, noisy machines and leave them in plain sight." Avara gave a small laugh. "Perhaps that is why some of my council fears your people. You are loud, and we are quiet." "Loud doesn't always mean dangerous," Tomas replied. "Sometimes it just means we're excited." His tone was light, but his words made Avara pause. There was a strange honesty in him, a way of speaking, without layers of hidden meaning. They talked for a little while longer. Tomas asked questions about the plants and the strange silver birds that sang in the trees. Avara answered, surprised at how easily the conversation flowed. when the sun shifted lower. The gathering ended. The humans were led back to their guest quarters, but as Avara walked away, she caught herself thinking about the way Tomas had looked at the fountain, as if trying to understand not just how it worked, but why it was built that way. That evening, the council met in private. The elders spoke cautiously about the humans. Some saw opportunity, trade, knowledge, alliances. Others saw risk, strange customs, unpredictable behavior. They are not like us. Minister Roran said firmly, they act before thinking. And this engineer, he wanders without respect for boundaries. He asked about the fountain. Avara said suddenly. Several heads turned toward her. The fountain? Minister Roran asked. Confused, yes, he wanted to know how it worked. He looked at it with the same interest a child might look at the stars. Roran frowned. That is exactly my point. They are careless with focus. But Avara shook her head slightly, or perhaps they are curious. Curiosity can be dangerous, but it can also be powerful. The council moved on to other matters. But Avara's thoughts remained elsewhere. She had met many diplomats in her life, but none had spoken the way Tomas did. None had asked questions that simple, yet that real. Later that night, as the palace lights dimmed and the city beyond the walls glowed softly under the twin moons, Avara stood once more on her balcony. She told herself the humans would leave in a few weeks, and life would return to its careful routine. But in her heart, she wondered if this meeting had been the first step towards something her people could not yet imagine. And far across the palace, in the guest quarters, Tomas sat by his window. Looking out at the glowing gardens, he thought of the princess's calm voice and the way she had laughed when speaking of quiet and loud worlds. Neither of them knew it yet, but this quiet beginning was about to change both of their lives. The days after the first meeting passed in a slow rhythm. The humans spent much of their time touring the city with guides, learning about Solera's customs and technology. The council kept the princess busy with official duties, but Avara found herself watching the human guests whenever their paths crossed. She did not understand why her attention often settled on Tomas, the engineer. Perhaps it was because he seemed so unlike the others, not chasing political goals, not hiding his thoughts behind perfect manners. He looked at everything as if it were worth understanding. One quiet afternoon, Avara escaped from the formal halls and went to the palace gardens. The gardens were her favorite place, a living maze of silver leaf trees, bright flowers, and gentle streams. She liked the way the air there smelled of water and sunlight. It was one of the few places where she could breathe without the weight of her crown pressing on her mind. She walked slowly along a stone path, touching the leaves as she passed. Ahead, she heard the sound of someone speaking softly, a human voice rounding the corner. She saw Tomas kneeling beside a small pond. He was speaking into a small recorder, describing the way the light from the water reflected onto the nearby crystal plants. His words were quiet, but there was wonder in them. Avara stepped closer. Do you always talk to yourself? Tomas looked up quickly, surprised, then smiled. Only when I'm thinking. The recorder helps me remember details later. What details? She asked, coming to stand beside him. How your plants bend toward the light, how your streams curve in patterns. Even the sound of the wind here is different. I've never been anywhere like this. Avara's gaze softened. These gardens have been here for generations. My mother taught me their paths when I was a child. She said the garden changes a little every year, but it always keeps its heart. That's beautiful, Tomas said honestly. They began walking together along the path. Tomas asked questions about the different plants, the shimmering fish in the streams, and the birds that sang in slow, deep tones. Avara answered patiently, amused by his interest in things she had long taken for granted. You notice small things. She said, most visitors look for what they can take or use. You seem to just look. Looking is how you learn, Tomas replied. Humans used to rush into things without understanding them. Sometimes we still do. But I think the best things take time to see. They reached the central fountain, the same one they had spoken near before. The water caught the sunlight and sent ripples of light across their faces. Avara hesitated. then said quietly, "You spoke of human medicine the other day. You said your people solved problems once thought impossible." Tomas nodded. "We have a long history of it. There were times when whole cities were dying from illness. People thought nothing could be done, but someone always found a way. A new idea, a new tool, a different approach. Sometimes the answer came from looking where no one expected to look." Avera's hands folded in front of her. Her voice was careful, almost to calm. "And if the problem is not illness, but a missing part of life, something that cannot be given by nature itself," Tomas met her gaze. "Then we try anyway. Nature sets the rules, but humans, we bend them." She looked away, unsure how to answer. No one in Solara ever spoke so boldly about defying the natural order. Her people valued harmony, accepting what was given. But here was this human, speaking as if limits were only puzzles to solve. They walked on, their conversation moving to lighter topics. Tomas told her about Earth's oceans, so vast you could sail for weeks and still not see land. He spoke of mountains capped with ice, and deserts where the air shimmered like glass. Avara listened, trying to imagine such extremes. As the sky began to shift toward the soft gold of evening, they reached a quiet corner of the garden where a small stone bench sat beneath a flowering tree. The petals fell gently around them, carried by the wind. "This is my favorite place," Avara said. "Few come here. It is too far from the main paths. It feels peaceful," Tomas said. "Sitting on the bench, like the world is holding its breath." Avara smiled faintly. "Sometimes I come here when I wish to forget I am princess." "And does it work?" he asked. "Not always. The crown follows me, even when I cannot see it." For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the sound of water trickling nearby. Then Tomas spoke again, his tone careful but curious. "Your council. They seem worried about us." "About me, maybe. They are cautious," Avara admitted. "They think too much change can break the balance we have kept for centuries." "And you?" Tomas asked. "Do you think the same?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I think change is like a river. You cannot stop it forever. You can only choose how to guide it." The words seemed to please him. He leaned back, slightly, looking up at the branches above. "Then maybe this river will take us somewhere good." When Avara returned to her chambers that evening, she found herself unsettled. She had spoken more freely with Tomas than she had with anyone in years, and he had spoken to her not as a ruler, but as simply herself. In the days that followed, they met in the gardens more often, sometimes by chance, sometimes, though, neither admitted it, because they were looking for each other. Their conversations drifted between light jokes and deep thoughts. Avara learned about his work fixing machines and solving problems. Tomas learned about her childhood in the palace, her duties, and her love for the quiet corners of Solara. The friendship grew like a seed planted in hidden soil, unseen by the council, but very much alive. But outside the garden walls, others were beginning to notice, and not everyone welcomed the sight of the princess walking beside a human. The palace's crystal towers shone brightly under the midday suns, but inside the council chamber, the air felt cold. 12 elders sat around the long oval table, their eyes sharp and their voices low. Princess Avara entered with her usual calm, though she could sense the unease in the room. Minister Roran, the oldest among them, rose to speak. His robe shimmered with gold patterns, a sign of his high position. "Princess," he began, "we must discuss a matter that has reached our attention." Avara took her seat at the head of the table. "Speak, Minister. What troubles you?" Roran's tone was careful but firm. "It concerns the human engineer, Tomas." The other elders murmured quietly. Avara kept her expression neutral. "What of him? You have been seen walking with him in the gardens." "Many times," Roran said. "Our guests are here for diplomacy, not personal closeness." The people talk, and talk spreads quickly. A younger council member, Lady Vereen, leaned forward. "Humans are short-lived compared to us. Their ways are strange, their loyalties uncertain. It is unwise to allow such familiarity." Avara folded her hands. "He has done nothing wrong." We have spoken. Yes, about gardens, about our worlds. Is that a crime now? It is not crime. Roran admitted, but it is dangerous. You are the future of Celara. Every word you speak, every step you take, can shift the path of our people. We cannot risk entanglement. Avera's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. You speak as if a conversation could destroy the kingdom. Is our peace so fragile? Varine's eyes narrowed. We speak as guardians of tradition. You know your duty, Princess, to form a bond with one who can strengthen our alliances and ensure the royal line. Continues. The last word stung, though Avara did not let it show. She knew what they truly meant. Choose someone of our own kind, someone powerful, someone who can give you a child. When the meeting ended, Avara left the chamber with her head high, but her heart felt heavy. She had faced the council's pressure many times before, but now it was tangled with something new. The quiet companionship she had found in Tomas. Later that day, she walked alone to the gardens. The air was warm, carrying the scent of the crystal blossom trees. She found Tomas near the fountain, repairing a small mechanical device he had brought from his quarters. He looked up as she approached. You look different today. Trouble? Avara sat beside him on the stone edge of the fountain. The council spoke to me. About you? Tomas raised an eyebrow. About me? That can't be good. They think it is unwise for me to spend time with you, she said softly. They say it could harm tradition, cause instability. He studied her face. And what do you think? She hesitated. I think they fear change. And you are change. Tomas smiled faintly. Humans do tend to stir the air when we walk into a room. But I'm not here to cause trouble. Avara looked into the water, watching the ripples. You asked me once about problems that seem impossible. I told you our people accept such things. But you said humans don't accept impossible so easily. That's true, Tomas said. We don't give up unless we've tried everything. Her voice lowered. My greatest burden is something no healer here can change. And yet, when I speak with you, I almost believe it could be different. For a moment, Tomas said nothing. Then he set down the device he had been working on and met her gaze. Avara, I don't know your whole story, but if there's something that matters to you, truly matters, I will try to help, even if it's impossible. She felt the sincerity in his words. It was not a promise made for politics or gain, but a simple truth. That alone made it more powerful than anything she had heard in the council chamber. Their conversation was cut short when a palace guard appeared, bowing stiffly. Princess. The council requests your presence again, urgently. Avara rose, her expression unreadable. Very well. She turned to Tomas. Stay here. I will return. When she entered the chamber again, she found the elders gathered around a communication crystal. A shimmering image of an off-world ambassador hovered above the table. It was Lord Darren of Valisar, a wealthy planet and a long-standing ally. He was offering an official marriage proposal. The room was filled with approval. Valisar was powerful, and such a union would strengthen Solara's trade routes. This is the path of wisdom, Princess. Roran said, his eyes gleaming. Lord Darren is young, respected, and his family is strong. Avara listened to their praise, her mind turning like a slow, heavy wheel. She thought of the gardens, the quiet bench under the flowering tree, and the human who had looked at her as a person, not a symbol. She gave the council no answer that day. Instead, she walked from the chamber without a word. That night, she found Tomas again, sitting under the twin moons. They want me to marry someone I do not love, she told him, for the good of the kingdom. Tomas was quiet for a moment. And what do you want? She looked at him, her voice steady. I want to choose my own path, even if it means defying the stars. Neither of them spoke after that. They simply sat together in the moonlight, knowing that the choice ahead would change more than just their own lives. The following morning, Tomas woke before the twin suns had risen. The guest quarters were quiet, the rest of the human delegation still sleeping, but his mind was restless. The princess's words from the night before echoed in his thoughts. I want to choose my own path, even if it means defying the stars. He didn't know the full medical details of her condition, but he understood enough. Something in her body made it impossible for her to have children, something her people had accepted as unchangeable. To Tomas, that sounded less like fate and more like a challenge on Earth. Humans had once faced illnesses and barriers far beyond their knowledge. Yet generation after generation, they had refused to give up. Sometimes the solution came from new science, sometimes from a simple idea that no one had tried before. Tomas was not a doctor, but he was an engineer, a problem solver. And problems, whether they were broken machines or broken hopes, could often be fixed with the right tools and the right thinking. That day, Tomas asked Captain Mira for permission to visit Solaris. Healing Archives, the captain raised an eyebrow. This isn't our mission, Tomas. We're here for trade agreements, not personal projects. It's important, Tomas said simply, to the princess, and maybe to our whole relationship with her people. Mira studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Fine, but you do it quietly. I don't want the council thinking we're here to change their royal traditions. The archives were vast, long halls lined with crystal tablets, each one glowing faintly with stored knowledge. The head healer, Sarala, was cautious at first, but Tomas's respectful questions and quick understanding softened her guard. Over several visits, he learned more about Seralan biology. The healers explained Avera's condition in careful terms, a rare imbalance in her life essence flow, preventing the creation of the seed of life. For centuries, their people had tried herbs, light therapy, even deep energy binding, but nothing worked. Tomas asked questions no Seralan had ever thought to ask. What if you introduced a compatible element from another species? What if the balance could be restored using a hybrid method? What if the problem isn't the seed itself, but the soil it grows in? Sarala tilted her head at his strange metaphors, but curiosity began to replace her doubt. She agreed to run small tests, harmless, non-invasive scans comparing human and Seralan reproductive patterns. The results were surprising. While Seralan life energy moved in slow, steady cycles, human energy flowed in quick, adaptive waves. In theory, the two patterns could complement each other, creating a balance neither species had alone. Sarala admitted, this has never been tested. Our traditions keep us from combining life in such a way. Tomas replied quietly, sometimes. Tradition is just a story we've told for so long that we forgot to ask if it's true. News of these experiments reached the council faster than Tomas expected. He was summoned to a private meeting where Minister Roran's voice was as sharp as glass. You are interfering with matters beyond your understanding, Roran said. The princess's condition is a royal concern, not a human project. Tomas met his gaze without fear. I'm not here to disrespect your customs, but if there's a chance, even the smallest chance, that she could have what she's been told she'll never have, shouldn't we try? Hope can be dangerous, Roran warned. Hopelessness is worse, Tomas answered. The council ended the meeting without agreement, but the tension in the palace grew thicker. Some ministers whispered that Tomas was meddling. Others, more quietly, began to wonder if this strange human might actually succeed. Through it all, Avara stayed silent in public, but in private she met Tomas in the gardens almost every evening. What are you doing with the healers? She asked one night, her voice low. Tomas hesitated, then told her everything. The scans, the tests, the theory that human energy could restore the balance her body lacked. Avara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she stood for a moment, her hands clasped tightly. My people feared change, she said softly. If they knew what you were suggesting, they already know, Tomas said. Some of them want it stopped. Then why keep trying? She asked. Because I've seen the way you look at the children in the city, Tomas said quietly. And because I can't stand the thought of you carrying a burden alone when maybe, just maybe, there's a way to lift it. For a long time, Avara said nothing. Then she gave him the smallest of smiles. You are reckless, maybe, Tomas admitted, but sometimes that's what it takes to build something new. Over the next days, Tomas and Sarala worked together, in secret, refining their idea. It was not a promise, but it was a path, a possibility. When word reached certain members of the public that the humans and healers were working together, a quiet ripple of interest spread through Solara. Some were scandalized, others were curious, and for the first time in years, Avara felt a spark of something she had not dared to feel, hope. But the council was far from finished with their objections. HFY Palace was quiet in the early morning light. The twin suns were just beginning to rise over the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. For Princess Avara, this dawn felt different, full of promise and new beginnings. The last weeks had been filled with talks, meetings, and moments that had tested her strength like never before. Yet, through it all, she had never felt more certain of her path. In the Great Hall, the council gathered once again. This time, the air was warmer, less heavy with doubt. The people's voices had been heard, and change was no longer a fear, but a hope. Princess Avara stepped forward, her hand in Tomas's. The human engineer who had come from a distant world, who had opened her eyes to new possibilities. Together, they faced the council and the people of Solara. "My friends," Avara began, her voice steady and clear, "we stand at the edge of a new chapter. Our world has been shaped by traditions. That gave us strength. But the future is not a mirror of the past. It is a story we write together." Tomas looked around the room, seeing faces full of curiosity and cautious hope. "I am honored to be here," he said simply. "I did not come as a stranger, but as someone who believes in the power of joining our worlds." The head healer, Sarala, stepped forward next. "We have worked together on a new treatment, a blend of human and surveillance science. It is not guaranteed, but it offers a real chance for the princess to have a child." Avara smiled, hope shining in her eyes. "This is more than a chance for me. It is a chance for all of us to grow, to learn, and to embrace the future." The council listened, some still unsure, but many moved by the courage and honesty before them. After long discussion, they agreed to support the princess's choice. In the days that followed, the palace prepared for a celebration, not only of a union between two people, but of two worlds coming together. The air was filled with excitement and joy. Avara and Tomas walked through the gardens, hand in hand, their hearts light. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Avara asked softly. Tomas smiled. "I was lost in the garden, talking to the fish and flowers, and I thought you were strange." He laughed. "I thought you were distant, but not anymore." "No," Tomas said. "Now I see the strength behind your quiet." Their friendship had grown into something deeper, built on trust, respect, and love. The obstacles they had faced had only made their bond stronger. As the twin suns set that evening, Avara looked up at the stars beginning to shine. "A new dawn is coming," she said. "Yes," Tomas replied, "for us, for Solara, and for both our peoples." Months passed. The new treatment progressed well, bringing hope where there had once been none. The story of the princess and the human engineer spread beyond Solara, inspiring others to open their hearts and minds. And in the quiet moments, beneath the shining stars and the silver leaves, Avara and Tomas dreamed together, not just of their own future, but of a universe where differences were a source of strength, and love could cross even the greatest distances. The future was theirs to write. The great hall was filled with the low murmur of voices and the shifting of feet on the polished floor. Bright banners hung from the tall walls, displaying the ancient symbols of Solara. The people had gathered, summoned by the royal council, to hear the princess's decision. The air was thick with tension, hope, and fear all mixed together. Princess Avara stood at the center of the hall. Her gown was simple but elegant, the color of deep ocean blue. Her eyes, clear and steady, scanned the crowd before her. She knew many of these faces. Some were her loyal supporters. Others were wary strangers. All were waiting to hear what she would say. Minister Roran stepped forward and spoke in a clear voice. "Citizens of Solara, we face a choice. Our traditions have guided us for generations. The princess must marry and continue our bloodline. A union with Lord Darren of Valisar promises strength and security. Murmurs of agreement came from parts of the crowd. Many trusted the council's wisdom and feared change, but there were others who whispered quietly, unsure or even hopeful for something different. Alvar raised her hand, and the hall fell silent. "My people," she began, her voice calm but filled with emotion, "I have heard the council's words, and I understand their meaning. Our traditions have kept us strong, yes, but they are not walls to trap us. They are paths to guide us." She paused, looking at the faces before her. "For many years, I carried a secret sorrow. I was told I could never have a child, that the future I dreamed of was impossible." A soft gasp came from the crowd. "But today," Alvaro continued, "there is a chance born from friendship, from courage, and from the joining of two worlds. Tomas, a human, has stood by me. Together, we seek not only love, but a future for Solara that is wider than the boundaries of our past." Some voices rose in shock, others in support. She stepped forward, her eyes shining. "Love is not just a feeling. It is a choice, a promise to face fear and uncertainty together. I choose that promise. I choose to walk a new path, not alone, but with Tomas." The hall was quiet for a long moment. Then, one by one, hands began to raise in support. A few voices spoke softly in agreement. Minister Roran looked troubled but did not interrupt. From the back of the hall, Lady Vereen called out, "Princess, are you willing to risk everything, your title, your people's trust, for this union?" Alvaro nodded. "Yes, because hope is stronger than fear. Because our strength lies not just in blood, but in our hearts and our choices." The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and protests, but the message was clear. The princess had spoken. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Alvaro found Tomas waiting beneath the silver leaves. They listened, she said softly, some with hope, some with doubt, but they heard me. Tomas smiled, reaching for her hand. "You were brave." Alvaro squeezed his hand. "I had to be, for all of us." The council did not give up easily. Meetings continued, some private, some public, but the people's voices were changing. More began to see the possibility of a future united by choice, not just tradition. Days passed into weeks. Alvaro and Tomas's friendship grew into something deeper. They shared quiet moments watching the twin suns set, dreaming of a future not defined by limits, but by what they could create together. One evening, as they sat beneath the stars, Tomas spoke quietly. "Whatever happens next, I am with you." Alvaro leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I am with you, no matter what, together." They faced the uncertain dawn, ready to build a future that would change their worlds forever. The mining station floated at the far edge of human space, far from the busy trade routes and shining cities. Here, life was slow, and every day looked almost the same. Inside the small communications room, Rafi sat alone, sipping lukewarm tea, and watching the blinking screens in front of him. He was the station's comms technician, a job that meant waiting for messages from ships, checking for distress calls, and keeping the signal arrays working. Most days, nothing happened. But today, one of the screens flickered strangely. Rafi frowned and leaned forward. The flicker wasn't random static. A signal was coming in, but it was weak and broken, almost like it was struggling to push through heavy interference. He tapped a few keys, trying to clean up the image. At first, the picture was just shapes and shadows. Then it sharpened, and his eyes widened. On the screen, he saw an alien girl. Her skin was pale gold, her eyes bright and sharp like a cat's, and her ears were pointed, covered in soft fur. She wore a simple white robe, but around her wrists and ankles were glowing bands of blue energy. She was kneeling on a stone-like altar, surrounded by strange glowing symbols. Rafi's heart raced. He had never seen anyone like her. The picture jerked and flashed, and for a moment, he thought he saw hooded figures standing behind her. Their faces were hidden, and their hands were raised, as if they were chanting. Then the signal crackled again, and a voice came through, faint, but clear enough to make his skin prickle. "Help! Before the eclipse." The voice sounded frightened. And then the image went black. Rafi sat frozen for a moment. The mining Station picked up all kinds of transmissions, traders, miners, even smugglers, but never anything like this. He quickly traced the signal's source. The coordinates pointed to a small moon orbiting a dead planet. The moon had no official settlements, no mining stations, and was considered abandoned. He knew one thing for certain. This wasn't a prank. Rafi didn't waste time. He pulled out his small handheld comm and sent a direct call to Mira. Mira was a transport pilot who had been running cargo between the outpost and nearby colonies for years. She wasn't just a skilled pilot. She was also one of the few people Rafi trusted completely. Her voice came through the comm, calm but curious. "Rafi, what is it? You sound like you've seen a ghost." "I might have," he replied quickly. "I picked up a distress signal. Not from any human ship. An alien girl. She's in trouble. She said something about an eclipse. The coordinates lead to an unlisted moon." There was a pause. "You're telling me you want to go to some abandoned rock because a mysterious cat-eyed alien told you?" "Yes," Rafi said without hesitation. "I think she's real. And if what I saw is true, she doesn't have long." Mira sighed. "You're lucky I'm bored today. Meet me at the docking bay in 10 minutes. By the time Rafi arrived, Mira's ship, the small, fast freighter named Starling, was ready to go. The ship wasn't fancy, but it was quick, with engines strong enough to outrun most trouble. Rafi climbed aboard, still holding the data chip with the signal recording. Once they were in space, Mira asked to see it. She leaned forward in her seat as the image played. Her expression grew serious. "That's not any species I've seen before," she murmured. "And those symbols, they're not human, not even close." "I think the people behind her are some kind of cult," Rafi said quietly. "She said they're waiting for an eclipse. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad." Mira looked at the coordinates on the nav screen. "That moon is way off any charted route. If someone is hiding there, they want to stay hidden." She set the course. "We'll find out soon enough." The trip took only a few hours, but as they approached the dead planet and its lonely moon, the space around them grew darker. The moon was small and cold, its surface covered in jagged cliffs and deep craters. "There's no power readings, no ship beacons," Mira noted. "It's dead, but your signal came from here." They circled until they found a large crack in the moon's surface, a canyon that led deep underground, inside the shadowy opening. Their scanners picked up faint traces of energy. "That's it," Rafi said. Mira carefully guided the Starling into the canyon and landed on a flat ledge. The air outside was thin, but breathable with light masks. They stepped out, their boots crunching on the dusty ground. The wind howled softly through the rocks, carrying an eerie, low-whispered dot at first. Rafi thought it was just the wind, but then he realized the whisper had words. They were too soft to understand, but they were there, moving like threads through the air. They followed the faint energy readings deeper into the canyon, until they reached a hidden stone doorway. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, the same ones Rafi had seen in the distress signal. Mira glanced at him. "Are you sure about this?" "No," Rafi admitted, "but we can't turn back now." They stepped through the doorway into a wide underground chamber. The air inside was warmer, heavy with the scent of old stone. And in the center of the chamber, she was there, the alien cat girl from the signal. She was bound to the same altar, the glowing energy bands still wrapped around her wrists and ankles. Her golden eyes widened when she saw them. "You came," she whispered in halting human speech. "Hurry, they will return." Rafi and Mira hurried forward, but before they could reach her, the glowing symbols on the walls flared brighter. The whispers in the air grew louder, and the ground trembled under their feet. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the chamber, footsteps echoed. Many footsteps. Mira looked toward the shadows. "We're not alone anymore." And in that moment, Rafi realized the signal had not just been a call for help. It had been a warning.